Well, the siege of the Jafar Express has ended in Pakistan. Pakistani security forces say that all the 33 militants involved in the standoff were killed. The security forces said the militants had killed 21 civilians, while 4 Frontier Corps personnel were also among the casualties. The Pakistani security forces managed to rescue most of the nearly 440 people held hostage during the train hijack in the Balochistan province. Now, according to the latest information, Operation Green Bolan to end the siege of Jafar Express ended with the deaths of all the 33 militants. The Baloch Liberation Army that hijacked the train full of passengers had released this video. As you can see, the militants can be seen blowing up the railway tracks moments before the Jafar Express train was hijacked. Now, Pakistani security forces said a large number of the hostages, including women and children, who were being used as human shields, have been rescued. The BLA fighters are demanding the immediate and unconditional release of Baloch political prisoners. The train carrying nearly 440 passengers was en route from Quetta to Peshawar when it was ambushed at the entrance of a tunnel in the remote Bolan district. Pakistan security forces separated a portion of the train and brought it to Quetta, but another portion of the train is still in control, or was still in control, of the heavily armed insurgents. The insurgents, heavily armed and strategically positioned inside a tunnel, issued a stringent 48-hour ultimatum to the Pakistani government demanding the immediate and unconditional release of Baloch political prisoners. They declared their stance as final and irrevocable, but that has changed, warning that any military action will result in the death of all the hostages, which again, I mention here, has changed. A portion of the Jafar Express train has now moved from the tunnel to the Quetta station that was hours earlier. Eyewitnesses reported intense gunfire as the assailants targeted the train. The presence of suicide bombers among the militants, who reportedly used women and children as human shields, had earlier complicated the rescue efforts. The rugged terrain and the train's location within the tunnel further had complicated the challenges faced by the rescuers. This incident not only exposed significant security lapses, but also underscored the deep-seated grievances fueling the insurgency in Balochistan province. The region is rich in natural resources. The province remains one of Pakistan's most underdeveloped regions. The local population's long-standing resentment of economic marginalization and political disenfranchisement has been a fertile ground for separatist movements like the BLA. Let's talk to our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik, who's now joining us live from Islamabad. Hi, Anas. Good to see you. We understand that the siege is now over. Can you confirm that to us?
Certainly so. About 30 plus hours later, the siege of Jafar Express has ended, resulting in the killing of all 33 terrorists from the Baloch Liberation Army. What we also know is that at least 21 passengers on board that ill-fated Jafar Express have also been killed. This has been confirmed by the Pakistani military spokesperson, the DGISPR Lieutenant General Ahmad Sharif, while speaking to the Pakistani media. He said and also confirmed that at least 4 Pakistani military personnel belonging to the FC, they have also lost their lives during this operation. At least 3 suicide bombers were killed with the help of snipers. They were in smaller groups. These suicide bombers were holding captive some passengers. About 346 of them were rescued during the past 30 plus hours or so. And then the final assault that was planned today, during that, no passenger was killed. This has been confirmed by the Pakistani military spokesperson, while reiterating that the siege of Jafar Express in Quetta, that was outbound from Quetta to Peshawar, has finally ended. Eric?
Anas Malik, the Pakistani authorities were earlier mum about this incident. Are they giving any information about what happened during the rescue operation and what happened after the rescue operation?
Well, two things. They've said that around 1 p.m. yesterday is when this attack began by blowing up the train track, and which can be seen as well in the footage released by the terror outfit BLA. That is number one. Number two is that they said that they claim, or they say that the passengers were killed before the security operation began. Number three is that they also say is that the personnel were killed in the operation that was launched yesterday. The 4 personnel were killed in the operation that was launched yesterday. In the operation that was launched today, which had expert snipers among them as well, no passengers were killed in the operation that was launched today. So there is some clarity onto how this operation went and why were the security forces mum about it, primarily because of the operational details, given that the operation at the time was ongoing. Eric?
Shifting our attention to Somalia, where security forces have ended a deadly 24-hour siege by Islamist fighters who had stormed a popular hotel in the central city of Beledweyne. On Tuesday, a car bomb exploded at a hotel in Beledweyne, kicking off an hours-long militant attack that has reportedly killed a number of people. The attack was carried out by Salafi jihadist military group called Al-Shabaab. It's an Al-Qaeda-affiliated group. Following the car bomb explosion, Al-Shabaab gunmen entered the hotel, leading to intense clashes with security forces. Now, after 24 hours, the officials say that the attackers have been neutralized.
They first attacked us with a vehicle laden with explosives. Since I was among those on duty during the initial attack, I also fought against the assailants. We truly fought to the end, but there were also suicide attackers. One of them detonated himself inside, resulting in the highest number of casualties.
According to the mayor, 7 people had been killed in the attack, but witnesses say that the death toll could be higher. The hotel where the attack took place houses elders and military officers involved in coordinating the government's offensive against Al-Shabaab. Most of those in attendance had been rescued. It is unclear as of now how many people have been wounded, but the lawmakers say that they were trying to organize planes to fly victims to Mogadishu for treatment. And parts of the hotel were reduced to rubble as government forces and gunmen exchanged fire. The 24-hour siege ended on Wednesday morning, leaving major and colossal damage. Among those killed in the attack were military officers, traditional elders and soldiers. Al-Shabaab said that it had killed 20 people, including government officials and leaders of a pro-government clan militia. But here's what you should be knowing about this area where the attack took place, Beledweyne, which is about 335 kilometers north of the capital of Mogadishu. It is an important location in the campaign against Al-Shabaab. The Somali forces, alongside African Union peacekeepers, continue to wage a campaign against the Al-Shabaab militants, which remain a big threat despite the ongoing military operations. Al-Shabaab, which opposes Somalia's federal government, frequently carries out bombings and assaults targeting government officials and also military personnel. According to a latest U.S. State Department report, Al-Shabaab uses its influence in Somalia to extort millions of dollars in revenue from residents and businesses. The group controls parts of rural Somalia and poses a major threat despite sustained military operations by government troops and also African Union. Our next story is about a medical marvel. An Australian man has survived 100 days with an artificial heart. A world-first success. Yes, you heard that right. That's what has happened. An Australian man with heart failure has become the first person in the world to walk out of a hospital with a total artificial heart implant. On Wednesday, Australian researchers and doctors behind the operation announced that the implant had been an unmitigated clinical success after the man lived with the device for more than 100 days before receiving a donor heart transplant in early March. The Biovoco Total Artificial Heart was invented by Dr. Daniel Timms. This is the world's first implantable rotary blood pump. Capable of fully replacing a human heart, it uses magnetic technology to replicate the natural blood flow of a healthy heart. While the implant is still in the early stages of clinical study, it has been designed for patients with end-stage biventricular heart failure, a condition that often develops after heart attacks and reaches a point where it can no longer pump blood effectively. So this is big, because every year more than 23 million people worldwide suffer from heart failure, yet only 6,000 receive a donor heart. This is according to the Australian government, which has invested $50 million into this. The implant is intended as a sort of life-saving bridge to keep patients alive until a donor heart becomes available. But is Biovica's long-term ambition to enable implant recipients to live without needing a heart transplant? Which brings us to the man at the center of this story, a man in his 40s from New South Wales, who was suffering from severe heart failure, and he volunteered to become the first recipient of the total artificial heart in Australia. He is the 6th recipient of a total artificial heart in the world. The first 5 implants took place last year in the US, with all patients receiving donor hearts before leaving hospital. And the longest time a patient had spent with a device before a transplant, it is 27 days. The Australian patient received the device on 22nd of November at St. Vincent's Hospital in Sydney. In a 6-hour procedure, he became the first patient to go home with the implant and lived with it for over 100 days. That's before receiving a donor heart in March. Jans called it a privilege to be part of this historical medical breakthrough. But while experts have hailed this as a great step forward for artificial hearts, there are still challenges ahead. Professor David Colquhoun, a board member of the Heart Foundation, pointed out that while the device functioned for over 100 days, a donor heart can last more than 10 years. He also noted that advances in heart medications have reduced majorly the number of patients needing such implants, and still this is just the beginning. The Biovica implant is part of a series of groundbreaking procedures, which is being conducted under Monash University's Artificial Heart Frontiers program. The program aims to develop 3 key devices to treat the most common forms of heart failure. And to that we say a revolution in heart care could be closer than we can imagine. Shifting our focus to West Asia, where building on its expansionist goals, Israel is gradually advancing its footprint in Syria and strengthening its base. And from the looks of it, they don't seem to be withdrawing anytime soon. Look at what Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has said. He said that the army is preparing to stay in Syria for an indefinite period. He said that during his visit to the military outpost in the security area on the summit of strategic Mount Hermon. Moreover, the government has tasked the Israeli Defense Forces, or the IDF, to prevent Syrian forces from gathering within 65 kilometers from the border with Israel. Apart from this, the Israeli army claims to be building more outposts along the buffer zone between Israel and Syria.
IDF is preparing to stay in Syria for an indefinite period. We will maintain security in the area and on Mount Hermon and ensure that all security areas in southern Syria are demilitarized and free of weapons and threats, while also protecting the well-being of the Druze community in the area.
And going by its moves, it is as if Israel has had it all planned out, which it seeks to execute in stages, or if we can say phases. As a part of its primary target, Israel seeks to control the largest possible area of Syria and later segregate it into 3 regions that form what it calls its defense system. That's what Israel is planning to do. Let's tell you about these 3 areas now. Number 1 is the region extends from the peak of Mount Hermon to the Syrian-Jordanian-Israeli border south of Tiberias. This is important because it allows the army to monitor Damascus and the Bekaa region in Lebanon. The second region, closer to the borders, includes towns in southern Syria and is called the Security Zone. The third region, called the Area of Influence, it spans over 65 kilometers, bordered on the east by the Damascus-Suez highway. And as it stands currently, The Israeli army controls the entire buffer zone from the border fence to 5 kilometers into Syria. 3 IDF brigades are openly stationed there as well, and they are tasked with preventing infiltrations to Israel. The army is also preventing Syrians from entering this area, with an exception for those residing within the 5-mile zone. Meanwhile, the Israeli army has defined the area less than 15 kilometers from the border as a security zone, where the IDF does not allow members of Syria's military to enter. The IDF is also preventing Syrian troops from stationing long-range weapons up to 65 kilometers from the border. As per reports, Israel is in talks with Russia as well to strengthen Russian military bases in Syria. Meanwhile, Israel has reportedly urged Washington to keep its troops in Syria as well. That's until Israel's plan is fully secured. Well, just for context here, since the regime change in Syria and the rise of Ahmad al-Shara, the IDF has carried out dozens of raids on military sites belonging to both the former and the current administrations in Syria, aiming to harm any attempt by the new regime to station its army near the border. The IDF also plans to establish a coordination unit which will focus on strengthening connections with the Druze population in Syrian villages near the border. If you're wondering how, well, they say that they will allow the IDF-controlled Syrian Druze population, which is a community which Israel committed to defend, to enter and work in Israel in a phased manner. Not just that, the Israeli army has also said to be committed to improving infrastructure of the towns where the Druze population live. Well, seeing all this, it does seem like Israel's plan is pretty foolproof, even though up until now, these are just claims. The moot question is, will Israel be able to strengthen its position in the Syrian soil? The coming days will reveal that. A major geopolitical shift is unfolding as China, Russia and Iran tighten their alliance in what could only be viewed as a direct challenge to the United States of America. Beijing is set to host a critical meeting on Friday, bringing together senior diplomats from Moscow and Tehran to discuss Iran's nuclear program. And this comes as ties between Iran and Russia have strengthened majorly since the Russia-Ukraine war began in 2022. A strategic cooperation treaty signed in January strengthened their partnership, while both the countries are on good terms with China as well.
China will hold the China-Russia-Iran-Beijing meeting on the Iranian nuclear issue on March 14th. Vice Foreign Minister Ma Jiaoshu will chair the meeting. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov and Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Gharib Abadi will come to Beijing to attend. The three parties will exchange views on the Iranian nuclear issue and other issues of common concern.
Iran confirmed the meeting and said it would focus on development related to the nuclear issue and also the lifting of sanctions. Now, this high-level engagement between Iran, Russia and China, it coincides with a closed-door United Nations Security Council session scheduled in New York on Friday, and that too is regarding Iran's rapidly expanding uranium enrichment program. UN's watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, claims that Tehran is enriching uranium up to 60% purity, just shy of the 90% required for weapons-grade material. Now, Washington's withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal during U.S. President Donald Trump's first term reignited tensions. Since then, Iran has steadily distanced itself from previous commitments. And China, meanwhile, has openly backed Iran's right to safeguard its nuclear program, while also advocating for renewed diplomatic talks. Meanwhile, the military dimension of the triumvirate is growing further. Russia, Iran and China have conducted extensive naval drills in the Gulf of Oman, a strategic waterway. Warships from all these three countries engaged in live-fire exercises. targeting simulated drone and boat attacks, along with counter-terrorism operations. Now, all these war games underscore a growing military partnership between China, Russia and Iran. It also marks the 5th consecutive year of trilateral exercises, reflecting a shared interest in countering Western influence in strategic maritime regions. Now, while China and Russia don't really operate in West Asian waters, their deployment is expanding as the region becomes increasingly militarized. Since November 2023, a month after the war in Gaza commenced, Yemen's Houthis have attacked ships linked to Israel in the Red Sea, claiming support for the Palestinians in Gaza. And a short-lived, temporary ceasefire last month put those attacks on hold. But the Houthis have threatened to resume strikes if Israel does not lift its blockade of Gaza. Meanwhile, the United States and other Western countries have also ramped up their naval deployment in the Red Sea, with a 10-nation force announced in December 2023 to counter Houthi attacks. The U.S. Navy also has a fleet based in Bahrain. So, as these geopolitical tensions escalate, diplomacy is also intensifying. Earlier this month, Trump said he sent a letter to Tehran with a proposal to revive nuclear negotiations. And last week, Trump made his stance clear that Iran has two choices. Number one, he said Iran should either strike a deal with Washington or else US will handle things militarily. And Iran's leadership is rejecting any talks on Washington's terms. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, accused the US of using negotiations as a tool for control and not diplomacy. And Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said Tehran will not negotiate under threats or commands. Take a listen.
It's not acceptable for them to say, we're ordering you not to do this and not to do that, or we'll do this. If that's the case, I'm not coming to negotiate with you at all. Go and do whatever the damn thing you want. We don't want to fight with anyone, but we're not supposed to bow off in humiliation to anyone. Should they come forward with dignity, we will speak with dignity.
So the message from Tehran is clear. Iran is willing to engage with the world, but only on equal footing. With China and Russia in its corner, the balance of power is shifting clearly. The United States faces a unified challenge from Moscow, Beijing and Tehran at this point of time.